We're jumping just right into it again. And past couple days, I have had a variety of just issues in terms of realizations about how I interact with the world within my marriage and just in the type of person that I want to be. And there's a lot there to unpack, but we're going to focus first and foremost on this idea of responsibility. So, keeping everything simple, let's jump into that. Welcome back to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. I'm your host and fellow student, Michael Klukas, and in this show, we boil down complicated topics into simple and actionable tips. So, like I said, there's just been a lot over the past couple of days here, and a lot of it, has pretty much been my fault, and that's something that I own up to and I will admit. But there's a lot of it also that I realize is just things that I didn't connect the dots on. There was things that I didn't realize I'd picked up as a kid, or things I didn't realize that I had misinterpreted as an adult. But even with that, there's something that goes beyond just the shrug of shoulders, whoops. There's that idea of responsibility. I've been taking too much responsibility for some things and then not enough responsibility for others. So there's got to be like some healthy middle ground where we realize, oh, okay, this is something that I'm responsible for, but also this is something I'm not responsible for. And we're able to differentiate into those two buckets. So I wrote down a little list here of like the kind of 4 things that I realized over the past couple of days here, and that I definitely imagine you guys have experienced as well, or something that, take it from me, you'll want to really get a good handle on as you go into your young adult life, or as you go into any relationship with other friends or romantic partners, whatever it is. Just, you have to understand what responsibility is and what it means to you. So the very first thing that I have written down here is that too much of anything is a bad thing. Now, I emphasize this one because there have been multiple points where I've taken too much ownership for a particular issue, a particular problem, and that in of itself is what caused more problems. Let me explain. It was just this idea that I was causing issues by believing that I was fixing them. I was causing issues by believing, oh, if I do this, if I am responsible for this, then I can be the one to solely fix it. But that's something that completely excluded my wife out of the equation. It completely made it so that I was the one in charge of everything. At least I believed so. I was the one in charge of making sure that if there was a fight, I had to be the one to change, and only me. If there was a misunderstanding, then I had to completely rewrite what I was doing and what I was thinking, because obviously it was on me. But that was just taking too much responsibility in a way that, one, didn't give my wife room to grow, and then 2, made it so that way I believe that I was majority of the problem, when of course there's points that my wife can improve upon. That's natural. She's human. But for me, thinking that all of it was on me, that just resulted in this misunderstanding happening over and over and over. And that's exhausting. It's exhausting for myself emotionally and mentally, and it's exhausting for my wife especially, because she has to deal with correcting me of like, oh no, you're doing too much. You're taking too much of this away. So with responsibility, you just have to understand that some things, yes, are going to be your fault, and it's important that you, in recognizing that, do own up to them. But you have to be able to filter out what things are not actively your fault and what things are actively shared among a larger group or with someone else. Now, the other thing that popped in, this is the second note that I had, is that what's truly yours versus someone else's, and that kind of just is a perfect little segue into this, is that, yeah, there are some things that you will do that you don't realize, that you don't catch right away as being part of the issue, as being part of the problem. However, even if that is the case, we still have to recognize what is ours. So for myself, a good example is this idea of dismissiveness, where my wife will bring something to me, and the worst of it is where I'm just going, yeah, a little wave of the hand, and just, dismissing whatever concern, whatever emotions being brought forward. And that's not something that I want to do. It's not something that I want to be, but it's a habit I picked up and a habit I developed from and I'm really where I'm really aware of this, from my childhood into my adult life, is this dismissive attitude. When things are going well or when nothing's happening, then that means things are going fine. And so I can dismiss, these little bumps in emotion, but that's not what I should be doing. And so that's recognizing that, okay, this is something that's truly mine. It's a habit of mine. It's causing issues. I need to work on that dismissive habit versus my wife and things that she might be working on. Those are her self-improvement projects. Those are her self-improvement areas. And I don't want to keep having these same fights over and over again, though, of course, and this is just for a little bit of marriage advice, if I can give that to anyone who might be wondering about that, or relationship advice in general, you're going to have the same fights over and over again, and they're just going to be a different color, a different shade on a different day, but the roots probably are going to be the same. But I don't want to continue that cycle to the best of my ability. I want to grow and break those loops and actually do something different. But that's going to take work. It's going to take effort and a lot more understanding of what makes me tick. And that's where, again, it goes back to this idea of what's truly mine, what's truly my responsibility to handle, to do, to improve upon, and to relearn, because there's a whole lot that still needs to be relearned here. And then that kind of brings it into the third point that I've written down, is the idea of own up to the effects that you have. Now, I distinctly want to emphasize the word effects here, because, yeah, in taking too much ownership for everything, which I was doing, that meant that I was believing everything was my fault. And that came from this idea of good intention, but the execution was still less than ideal, in that I was not considering my wife, I was dismissing her, and not actively being a good partner. However, the other thing that pops in here is that there are still side effects of the things that I do, even if they are well-intentioned. And this is one of those, whereas I believed if I was taking the brunt of arguments and disagreements and pain points and working to improve them by myself, that was a good thing. Now, in concept, the idea of taking the bad, working on it, improving it, fantastic. You want to do that? Great. However, the problem that occurs is that I wouldn't realize the side effects that would have of blocking out my wife, blocking us off from conversation, that dismissive attitude again coming up, or just reinterpreting everything through my lens and not understanding hers, was just a recipe for disaster multiple times. And so those were the side effects that I wasn't accounting for, that I wasn't realizing. And while I can shrug it off and say, okay, I just didn't know, I didn't realize I was having that effect on people. Honestly, that does not matter. It still is something that you need to be responsible for, and something that I need to be responsible for is just the side effects. I might be perfectly well-intentioned, I might have the best interest of someone else in heart, but I may do something that lands poorly, something that they don't appreciate, something that makes them upset, something that hurts them. And for me, I can just think to myself, no, I'm a good person. I was doing this to help. I was doing this because I care about you. I was doing this because I thought you would enjoy this, you would like this. But it doesn't matter in the end. If the effect was that still hurt them, if the effect was that emotionally it made them feel unsafe, uncared for, or like I wasn't being fully present and fully there with them, I have to take responsibility for that effect. I have to be able to understand that, hey, I might be well-intentioned, I might believe I'm the best person in the world, but if my effects hurt someone else, that hurt is because of me. That is my responsibility to own up to that. It can't just be waved away and have it disappear. And that's something that's hard to reconcile with, because again, if I might be doing something from completely good intentions, then I may not realize what pain I am causing. And I want to make sure you guys don't fall into that trap as well, because it's super frustrating when it then, of course, hurts your ego. It hurts your pride a little bit to say, oh, okay, I have to admit that I did something that I thought was good, I believe was good, and I'm being, I'm in trouble for it. But that leads perfectly into this final point here, which is the idea that no matter what, you will mess up. And at the end of the day, it is okay that you will mess up. it's expected that you will mess up. You're not going to be perfect. You should never think you're going to be perfect. But in understanding that there's a lot of room left to grow, that we have a lot of room for improvement, that makes it a lot easier to say, okay, I realize this. I want to be better. I need to be better. And that means I'm not going to get it right all the time. I'm not going to be this infallible person. I'm human like anyone else, and humans are imperfect. And that helps alleviate some of that, again, that hit to the ego, that hit to the self-confidence of just understanding, okay, no, I'm going to mess up. But that's not the end of the world. That's not a write-off of everything that I've done, everything that I've wanted to be. It's just this gentle reminder that things are not going to always go as I thought they would. They're not going to always go as I hoped. And what's going to be done is that in going through these 4 things that I have out here, is that knowing that too much of anything is going to be a bad thing, knowing that you have to be able to understand what's truly yours versus someone else's in the realm of taking responsibility for something, as well as the effects that you might have, even if they come from a well-intentioned place in your heart. And then topping it off with the fact that, hey, among all these things, you're going to get them wrong at points. You're going to mess up. You're going to think you have it right. And I've done that so many times in this past year of marriage, just in general throughout my relationship, where it's like I thought I had it right, but I didn't. I was so far off the mark because I didn't realize I was running in the completely opposite direction than where I needed to go. So I'm going to mess up. And that's okay as long as I can, doing those first 2 things, take responsibility for it, change it up, improve it, and do better. Be better. Even if that's one habit today, one small difference tomorrow, and 10 small differences in the next week, just whatever it is. It's just these incremental changes that will help me be the type of person that I believe I can be, that I should be, that I want to be. And I leave you guys with that. Just this understanding that we're going to mess up in this world. We're going to mess up in our relationships. And that's not the end of everything, at least hopefully not. But it is going to be work. It is going to be painful. And yeah, there's going to be points where we feel embarrassed. We're going to cringe at ourselves. We're going to think, oh yeah, I really, really hate this feeling. But you can't avoid it. You can't stuff it down and just say, okay, it's not there. We do have to recognize that there are things that are completely our responsibility. And the only way that it gets better is if we actively choose to be better. But with that, if you watch us on YouTube, make sure that you leave us a comment, like, and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you know every time I upload a new episode of the podcast. If you're listening to us on Spotify or another podcast app of choice, make sure that you leave us a 5-star rating and give us a follow. So that way you know every time I upload a new episode. But keeping everything simple, have an amazing day. You're amazing people. Go out there and do great things. We'll see you next time.